In the previous lesson, where we last left off, we have our blog, but it looks like we introduced one tiny bug. Note that when I click on a link, nothing happens. So let's figure out what that problem is. I will go back to Sublime Text 2 into db.php, and I see that when I call the getById function, notice that we run query fetch all, but what we really should be doing is returning that. So let's save that and try it again. Now when I click on a link, now it's working as it normally does. So good, now we have the ability to view all of the posts. We can click on a link to view a specific post. We have the ability to go to the admin directory and create a new post, which is good. But the problem is, as it stands, anyone can access that admin directory. So we need to lock that down. And rather than building an authentication system from scratch, it's important to consider the right tool for the job. In this case, it's a very small makeshift blog. We will be the only ones who will ever access the admin directory. So in these cases, we can take advantage of Apache to provide its own authentication. And this can be a good choice in situations like this. We have a single folder that needs to be protected. We have one or two people that need access to it. Let's save ourselves some time and use an htaccess file. If I return to Sublime Text, I'm going to create a new file within the admin directory called .htaccess. And this is a file that Apache will automatically read. And the information that we had here will override what's stored within that default configuration file. But before we continue on, we need to make sure that we have the ability to override what's in the default file. So I will switch over to the terminal, and if I edit that file on the Mac, that will be in etc apache2 httpd.configure. I will enter my password, and now I'm going to look for allow override. So you can see here, this is the default settings. And if I move down just a bit, it is set to allow override none. And that's okay. We do want the default settings to be allow override none. But if we scroll down, we can see we have the settings for my sites directory. Your path might be different, but the contents can be the same. So if I scroll down, we can see here that I have allow override equal to all. Now, if yours happens to say none, you'll simply want to go over here and change that to all. Next, you're going to exit out. You're going to restart Apache with sudo apache control restart. And now you will have the ability to create these htaccess files so that you can set specific settings for the directory that it is contained within. So now, let's go ahead and implement our authentication. I'm going to begin by writing auth name, and this will be the title. When the user tries to access a file in that directory, what will the title be? And I'm going to say administrators only. Next, what kind of authentication are we doing here? Well, let's just stick with basic. And next, it needs to know a location to the file that contains our credentials. And this file is going to contain the username that you will use to log in. So in this case, it would be Jeffrey. And then it also will want an encrypted password. So if my password is 1234, it's going to want that to be encrypted. But don't worry, Apache will do that for us if we run a single command. So it's important to know that you do not want to store your user file within your project root. Instead, it's a much better choice to store it outside of your project. So why don't we store this within /users/Jeffrey, and we're going to call it .htpasswd. Now, it doesn't have to be called this, but that is a convention, and Apache does have some things to protect against that. So for example, if you do store it within your root, there is a setting within Apache that will keep users from viewing that file on the web. Now, the final thing that we'll need is what are we going to require? And we want to require a valid user. And that's our htaccess file. Very simple. You can also use htaccess files, for example, if you want to reroute, maybe somebody goes to this URL, but you really want to send them to that URL. That's the kind of things you can do with htaccess, and that's referred to as mod rewrite. It can be complicated, but I do recommend that you pick up a book on mod rewrite when you feel ready. It's not important right now, though. So I'm going to close the htaccess file, and the next step is to create the htpassword. So we go back to the terminal to do that. This time I'm going to browse once again to users, Jeffrey, and now if I have Apache installed, watch what happens if I run htpasswd. Notice that that's a built-in command that we can use. So in this case, what we want is the -c. We want to create a new file. So I'm going to run that, -c, and it does accept some parameters here. First, it wants to know what is the name of the file. We're going to call it thatconvention.htpasswd. Next, it wants to know what will be the username to log in. We're going to give it tuts+. Finally, it wants to know what is the password. Well, I'm just going to add 1234 just for our demo. Do it one more time, and now note that it has created that. So now, if I try to edit that file in Vim, you'll see that it has created the username, followed by a colon, and then the encrypted version of the password 1234. Good. So now if we come back, we have created that file. Hopefully, everything should be working now. Let's view it in the browser. So if I switch back over to Chrome, if we did everything right, this is fine. We should be able to view the public files. But as soon as I go into that admin directory, now watch, this panel pops up and it will not allow us to access a single file until we enter the correct credentials. In this case, we set it to tuts+ and 1234. And now we're in. Great. Now, one thing that's important to remember, if we go back to that password file, and I will switch over to terminal and simply run vim users jeffrey.htpassword, is that we can add more to this file. So if we cd into that directory, like this, I can still run the htpassword tool and add more users. But if we instead run htpassword on that same file and we create a new one for Tom, we'll add our password there. Now you'll see if we edit that file, that now we have two options here, like so. And that's how you can have your own credentials, but if you want to give, for example, Tom on your team access to that folder, that's how you could do it. And now, if we reload, you'll notice that it will just keep you logged in. If you want to test that again, there's a couple ways. You could either clear your cache, or even if you wanted to change this. So why don't we change it to Jeffrey? And now it will force me to log in again. And now I can do Tom, and now Tom has credentials to get into the backend as well. All right, so as you can imagine, if you're doing that on your own, you can protect your folders in as little as around 30 seconds worth of work. And it's a nifty tool to have, especially for little projects like this. So in the final lesson, we are going to return to the home page and ensure that rather than just spitting out the entire blog post as we are currently doing, we only want to spit out an excerpt of the blog post. And then when they click on the link, that's when you display the post in its entirety. I'll see you there.